Feds have a plan to block the sun. What are the risks? Joseph Mercola, DAFACN, writes, solar radiation modification is a form of geoengineering that aims to cool off the Earth by reflecting sunlight back into space. The controversial strategy comes with significant risks, but that did not stop the White House from moving forward with a research plan for solar and other rapid climate interventions. Solar radiation modification, SRM, is a form of geoengineering that aims to cool off the Earth by reflecting sunlight back into space. The controversial strategy comes with significant risks, but that did not stop White House from moving forward to research a plan for the solar and other rapid climate interventions. The congressionally mandated research plan is focused on atmospheric-based approaches such as SAI and MCB, as opposed to space-based approaches, which include mirrors in space or white roofs and other local scale measures to increase surface reflection. The research would help to prepare the United States for possible deployment of SRM by other public and private actors, the report notes, suggesting the government is seriously considering the use of this extremely risky technology if it has not already decided to move forward. Why don't they just pass a law asking everybody to paint their roofs white to reflect the sun back out? Anyway, what is a stratospheric aerosol injection? SAI, stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI, involves injecting reflective aerosol particles into the stratosphere where they reflect sunlight away from the Earth. Volcanic eruptions are natural versions of SAI, but technological constraints around man-made SAI as dispersing aerosols in sufficiently high altitudes is challenging, according to a climate analytics report. The Union of Concerned Scientists explained, in effect, SAI simulates what happens during large volcanic eruptions when volcanoes emit small particles into the upper atmosphere called the stratosphere. These particles reflect sunlight and lead to cooling for as long as they remain in the stratosphere, which may be up to a few years after injection. The White House report also highlighted potential issues with SAI, noting SAI approaches would worsen soil acidity, no kidding, with impacts to food production, no kidding, compared to warming at representative concentration pathways 8.5. Levels without SAI in some regions due to acidic deposition, for example, the Pacific Northwest, southern Greenland, and the Himalayas and polar regions. The impacts of sunlight scattering could have negative effects on crop growth that harm nutrients and negate the benefits of limited temperature increases using SAI. SRM would not address ocean acidification or its implications for oceanic ecosystems. Other problems include the potential that SAI could result in increased exposure to particulate matter from the injected aerosols and changes in radiative forcing, which could offset any potential health benefit from SAI, such as reduced ozone formation. There is also concern that SAI could increase wildfires and smoke exposure in some areas, as well as increase health impacts due to waterborne diseases in others. And what is marine cloud brightening? MCB, marine cloud brightening, involves spraying salt or other chemicals into marine clouds in order to increase their reflectiveness. Little research into MCB has been conducted, but field trials have already begun in Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Using a seawater sprayer attached to a barge, seawater is sprayed into the air, creating sea salt crystals. These crystals float into the sky to form a fog and bolster the existing cloud's reflectivity. According to the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, the brightened clouds may also stay above the reef longer than ordinary clouds, reflecting even more sunlight. The problem, however, is that this untested strategy could have unintended consequences. Potential negative effects could include influencing local weather patterns, potentially mildly suppressing rainfall over the reef and adjacent land, and reef restoration and adaptation program explained. Can you imagine? This means more drought. David Keith, Gordon McKay Professor of Applied Physics at Harvard University, added that several key risks exist for marine cloud brightening, which is why his research team does not focus on it. Quote, even if marine cloud brightening could work, it could affect large-scale climate and weather patterns if it were used on a large enough scale, say to achieve the level of radioactive forcing that would be big enough to offset some of the greatest impacts of climate change. This is because marine cloud brightening could only be implemented in limited areas where the right kind of clouds exist, which is perhaps only 10% of the planet's surface. There are several key risks that need to be better understood, end quote. Increasing geopolitical tensions. Adding to the controversies, the use of SRM carries significant geopolitical risks, the White House reports. An example of this occurred in 2023 when a startup team, Make Sunsets, said it had launched weather balloons containing helium and sulfur dioxide, SO2, into Mexican skies in order to alter the stratosphere. Who gave them permission to do that, I'd like to know. The company was selling cooling credits, quote unquote, via its website for $10 in exchange for releasing 1 gram of SO2. The Mexican government fought back, however, announcing plans to prohibit and where appropriate, stop experimentation practices with solar geoengineering, causing the team to suspend its operations, thank goodness. However, Make Sunsets is still reportedly planning to conduct further weather modification experiments in the US, but the fact remains if and when SRM becomes widely used, it will have global effects that transcend borders. Supercomputers have run models to predict how solar radiation management may affect different parts of the Earth, not only in terms of temperature, but also rainfall and snowfall. Will biodiversity suffer? Among the risks outlined by the White House were those related to biodiversity. In a news release from the Springer Nature, it explained that once started, geoengineering is too dangerous to stop. But given the politicized nature of the technology, such rapid starts and stops are unlikely. Abrupt termination causes changes in local climate that are 2 to 4 times more rapid than those caused by climate change itself. In many cases, rapid geoengineering threatens ecosystems by forcing species to move in one direction to maintain similar temperature conditions and a different direction for similar precipitation conditions. Could geoengineering backfire and lead to agricultural control? There are other concerns about geoengineering's nefarious side, particularly since Bill Gates remains heavily invested in climate modification technologies that not only will destabilize the Earth's climate systems more, but also can be weaponized against the global population by controlling rainfall and drought. In a previous interview I conducted with Vandana Shiva, PhD, she explains the company that collects patents on gene editing organisms both in health and agriculture is Editas, founded by a main financial investor for the Gates Foundation. Gates is also a big investor in Editas. So here's a company called Editas to edit the world as if it is a world program. The 2 scientists who got the Nobel Prize this year have both been funded in their research by Gates. My mind went back to how Rockefeller financed the research, got the Nobel Prize, and then made the money. So you finance the research, then you finance the public institutions, whether they be national or international. You invest and force them down the path where they can only use what is your patented intellectual property. At the end of it, where does food come from? It comes from seed. He wants to control it. It comes from land. He's controlling that. He's become the biggest farmer owner in the United States, but you need weather control. You need a stable climate. So what could be a weapon of control of agriculture? Weather modification. He calls it geoengineering. This is engineering of the climate, and again, making it look like he's going to solve global warming by creating global cooling. And this is from children'shealthdefense.org. Thanks to Stuart Bramhall, and this is on Out of Mind too. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.